Hey folks, happy Friday, almost weekend. Just wanted to come on and say hi. I just came back from swimming in an open pool, did about 1,600 yards in there, so that's the hair and the no makeup again. I just couldn't resist. So I might have family coming over later this weekend. Wanted to make sure I got a little exercise in. So anyway, today I want to talk to you about, do you want to retire early? Because a lot of my clients do, and that's how they come to me. They're like, okay, I want to retire early. Now, what do I need to do? Now, if you remember from last week, we were talking about All Your Worth, which is a really great book that was recommended to me by one of my friends as being one of their favorites on finance. And one of Elizabeth Warren's and her daughter, sorry, I don't remember her name, main premises to that is that you use 50% of your income, hi, welcome, 50% of your income on must-haves, 30% on what you want, and 20% for savings. So obviously this can be a complicated subject and one that I would love to talk to you individually about, because it makes a lot more sense if I'm working with your numbers, but I still think I can give you some great value by just going over some principles. Many of you might know I'm Karen from Gaijin Works Coaching. Hi, how are you? And I coach on both time and money and set people up with investments for long-term success. Oftentimes it's entrepreneurs who are making, say, $3,000, $5,000, maybe $10,000 a month or more with their businesses. And sometimes I have corporate clients come to me by referral, and that's totally awesome too. So let's break this down a little bit. The first thing you need to do if you want to retire early is, of course, you have to plan for it, right? So, yes, life will throw you curveballs, and you'll have to deal with them. And I'm pretty good at that too. I'm pretty good at strategy. But nevertheless, even knowing that, you have to have a plan. Like if you were going to travel across the United States, whether you're on the East Coast or the West Coast or in between, let me ask you, would you set out for that trip, for that vacation, without having a plan, without having a roadmap, without having like anything in front of you? That could be really fun too if you have a lot of money or just a lot of free time. You could just say, okay, I'm going on an unknown destination. That could be fun. That could be great. You just head out on any old freeway and you get to wherever you get and you enjoy as much as you can along the way. But if you're in California and you want to go to Boston, Massachusetts, or Cambridge, where I grew up spending my summers, which is an awesome place, by the way, near Harvard Square. If you want to go there, then unless you want to take, I don't even know how much time it would take, but you've got to have a plan, right? You get the gist of this. You've got to have a GPS on your car. You've got to have a physical roadmap. You've got to have a way that you're going to get from California to Massachusetts. And if you're like most people and have a limited amount of time for your vacation, it's very likely that you are going to check out in advance what the fastest route to get there is. Thank you so much for that thumbs up. Really appreciate it. So, and I can't see comments yet. And if you have questions, I'll always answer them after the live video is over if I don't get to see them during the broadcast. So you've got to start with a plan. And I realize that can be overwhelming. Like, first of all, most people don't even know. Like, even the most educated clients that I have oftentimes don't know, like, how much money they have to save for retirement. So they say, is $2 million enough? I don't think so. How about $5 million? I mean, these are big numbers, guys, and I realize that for a lot of you, you may not even be used to like thinking in those numbers. But the reality is you have to do the math. I mean, that's where I come in. I offer free financial consultations. I sit down with you for free and we map all this out. So don't worry. You don't really have to do the math, but you have to be willing to see the math, right? You have to be willing to plan it out and say, okay, well, how much do I make per year now? Okay, so if I retire on $2 million, will that be enough? Well, $2 million sounds like a really big number, but actually it's not that much money to retire on. If you break it all down, the way people are living longer these days, $2 million really isn't that much money to retire on, unless you really want to scale back on your expenses, right? So the first goal is to figure out then, okay, so how much money do I make now is one. Number two is, when I retire, do I want to live on the same amount of money that I am now? Or am I doing so well that I'm like paying off my houses, paying off all my loans, and I know that my income needs will be a lot less? So you've got to figure that out. You've got to figure out what amount is it that you want to live on. And really, guys, you have to decide, like, when I retire, is it going to be this glorious thing? Am I going to get to upscale in my life? Am I going to like travel the world or travel or go to places or, be able to take my grandkids to Disneyland, what, or take them to Europe or take them on a cruise? Like, what is it that you want? That you also have to set out for yourself in writing. You can do it with me. That's great. If you work with me, which again is totally for free. The reason is that I market for over 100 of the top financial firms in the United States. Yes, even with the wet hair after swimming, that's reality. I do. So I will actually make them come and compete for your business depending on what goals you choose. And yes, I do sit on your side of the table, even if we do this virtually, which with tons of my clients I do, because I will have your best interest at heart. And that really is like my favorite part probably of my job, is that I get to advocate for people. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an advocate, but I get to advocate for people. I get to take their goals, go to these 100+ companies and say, okay, who's got the best deal? Who's going to make the most money for my client, right? So when you work with me, we're going to talk about these figures. We're going to talk about, do you want to, downscale when you retire? Are you thinking about upscaling? Are you thinking about traveling? We're going to put some real numbers to your plans. And then comes the fun or the challenging part, right? When we figure out how much you have to save to meet those goals at your goal designated retirement age, maybe it's not 65, maybe it's 55, maybe it's 45, although I will tell you to retire at 45 is much more challenging, because here's the deal. I have a client of mine who's already saving like, maybe $6,000 a month, which is a lot of money to be saving. So major kudos to him. Of course, I'm not giving any names because I never do that. It's privacy. But, I mean, I was impressed. That's a lot of money, and he's already doing it. He's already banking it, and he's in his 30s. So he's got time, which is beautiful because that's a huge part of this equation. If you tell me, which I do have some clients that have told me, I'm 56 and yes, I want to retire in 4 years, you can imagine. You don't have to be a math whiz to understand that you either have to already have a lot of cash socked away, or you're going to have to change something, right? You're either going to have to change what your life's going to look like when you retire, which is why I love having these conversations with those of you who are so much younger than I am, because really, it's so powerful if you get this now. You see these beautiful people, right, working at Walmart. They're in their 70s. They've gone back to work, maybe with the market fluctuation. They lost a ton of money, or they just didn't have this as a priority to save money during their lives. And so there they are. They're working at Walmart in their 70s. And that doesn't look like much fun for me. If you're doing it just because you don't need money and you want to get out and socialize, maybe, yes. But honestly, that's not usually why those people are there. So I'm here to help you not be one of those people. And they're beautiful people. Of course, they're beautiful people. But planning is essential. So, for example, this client of mine wants to retire at 55. He's got almost 20 years, already saving $6,000 a month to meet his goal of like $5 million. So that'll get him about $2 million, just to give you a rough estimate. That'll give him about $2 million. And it will allow him to retire early, but $2 million is not really enough. So when I talk to my senior investment advisors, which I have at multiple different companies, which I love because I get to tap into all those brains, right, who've been doing this for decades, they said, really, to reach $5 million, you're going to have to save about $12,000 a month. Wow. That's a lot of money, guys. That's a lot of money. And $5 million is not unrealistic. If you're that young, what you have to think about, you have to think about so many things. But one of the things that you've got to think about is inflation. What's today's dollar going to be worth tomorrow? So let's say you're making $100,000 a year, okay? And so you say, okay, well, when I retire, I might not have homes yet, so maybe I'm going to buy some homes, or for whatever the reasons are. I want to travel a lot. I want to do extravagant things. I want to still earn $100,000 a year off of my income, off of my savings. You've got to have a lot of money to sustain, that kind of level. So when you're making your decisions and you're and this is what I help my clients do, you're kind of dialing this back, and hopefully the younger the better. Coming back from the swimming pool, I was just listening to a little bit more of Elizabeth Warren's book, and she was telling this story about a dad who was newly divorced and really missed his boys, and so just wanted to spoil them. And I would say, in my experience, I've seen a lot of parents who, we all just love our children, right? So they want to spoil their children, whether they're divorced or not. So I want to share this game that this dad came up with, which I thought was brilliant, when it was his turn to watch the kids on the weekend. because before that he was like maxing out all his credit cards, taking them to Six Flags, taking them to all these entertainment parks and so forth. So when he did the math with Elizabeth Warren's help, he said to his two boys, he said, okay, and he flashed like he got cash out. He got 12 $10 bills. So they're like, wow, right? Stars in their eyes. Like, it's like, okay, we have $120 to spend between the three of us this weekend. And it was awesome. I love that story because guess what happened? And even more powerful, he empowered his boys, which means he was teaching them financial education. And he said, okay, but you guys are going to decide how we're going to spend this. And they're like, oh, yeah, cool, right? That's a wad of cash. And yes, it's a wad of cash, but $120 can go pretty fast, right? So pretty soon he had them looking in the newspapers to see about, maybe car shows or airplane shows or things that didn't cost as much money. And by the end of the weekend, they still had money for pizza with extra whatever, as long as they drank water. So, wow, impressed. What a great way to do it. So, it's super important, guys, to make a plan, and make a plan now as early in your life as you can. And then you can adjust these things. You can take your 30% of wants. You can bump up your savings rate. Be really safe. Some of the products that I market for are so awesome. They're like secrets of the wealthy that have been around since 1913. They're products that used to only be marketed for the wealthy, but now kind of like iPhone 1 to iPhone 7, technology has changed, and these products are available to just about anybody. There are certain qualifications, so you do have to meet those, but they're not financial qualifications. And so you can invest in those products without risking even 1 penny of your money. And when you're thinking about long term, when you're thinking about retiring early, you don't have to put all your money in these products. Maybe you still want to put some money in the stock market. I mean, gosh, guys, of course it's been doing really great. And so tempting, especially if you haven't seen all the cycles that I have, like my mom losing $2 million in 2001. It can get pretty scary, and that can happen pretty fast. So having the safety net, having some of these other products to help you diversify is so important. So I think that's just about it for today, but have a great weekend. Ask me any questions that you like. Actually, if you could ask me some questions, that would be super helpful. I'm planning to do a little bit more formal webinar in a couple of weeks with slides and so forth. So if you could tell me what you'd like to hear about, I would really appreciate you putting a small comment in there and just letting me know what your questions are. So, as always, sending you guys like tons and tons of light and love. And I'll talk to you next week. Okay, bye for now.